G'day guys, Rob Woodman here with ACF Environmental and welcome to LIDbit, a video blog that covers all kinds of things happening in the Northeast related to green infrastructure and low impact development. Today's episode is a little bit shorter than some of the first few episodes, but covers a site visit I made today when I was down in Baltimore, and this episode is at North Point State Park in Baltimore, Maryland. Today's episode will really just focus on some of the features and benefits and performance advantages of an open joint permeable paver system as an option when you're considering different PMPs for various retrofit sites. So sit back and enjoy this quick tour of a little site in Baltimore, Maryland. G'day guys, Rob Woodman here with ACF Environmental, and today we're at North Point State Park in Baltimore, Maryland. The purpose of today's visit is to take a look at some open joint permeable pavers that were installed a couple of years ago. And I really wanted to see how they were looking after a couple of years and how they're performing now that they've been in place for really, I think, about 2.5 years. You can see that the permeable pavers themselves were used in the parking spaces only, with regular pavement in the drive aisles, which is a pretty common industry-wide approach to deploying permeable surfaces strategically and not necessarily everywhere. With the open joint permeable concept, we're looking at a solid concrete block with an open 1/4 inch gap between each paver. So there's no aggregate infill or chipstone, which gives you tremendous ability to transfer water from the surface down into the stone below, but also to store a bunch of sediment over time, which really reduces the maintenance burden on permeable surfaces. As is typical, you will see that some material has filled in these open 1/4 inch gaps, and that's generally where you're adjacent to the pavement, which kind of makes sense. That's where you have that heavier load of sediment running off. But then as you move beyond that, you start to see the dissipation of that accumulated material, and these gaps over here being pretty open still with very little material, as opposed to what we see here, some soil and sediment, and then even a little bit of vegetation that's growing. In a typical permeable pavement, like permeable asphalt, permeable concrete, or even some of the other pavers out there with aggregate infill, this kind of material would really challenge the performance of the system. But the nice thing here is that it's easily, readily removed, and with all this other inlet capacity around it, you could build an argument to say that, man, even though there's stuff in these gaps, it doesn't really need to be maintained at this time, because if water passes over those first few blocks, it's got somewhere else to go. Another interesting fact about concrete surfaces, whether it's permeable, impermeable, or whatever it may be, is that it holds paint really well too. The concrete seems to really hold paint, so you don't end up having to stripe these systems anywhere near as often as you do regular pavement. So just another side co-benefit of permeable surfaces, or rather concrete surfaces in general. I've walked around the whole complex now and taken a look at kind of all the areas where these pavers are placed. And really thrilled to see that there's very little materially accumulated, and so I don't think they've maintained the system at all yet, and it doesn't look like they need to at all anytime in the near future. And that's encouraging, because one of the big pitches for an open joint permeable paver is those extended maintenance cycles, or those low life cycle costs, and we're certainly seeing that today because this system has been in a couple of years, and certainly no evidence that any major maintenance needs to be happening at this time. I hope you enjoyed this little site visit to North Point Park in Baltimore, Maryland, and to see this open joint permeable paver. The product featured here is Power Block. It's an ACF product, but there's other great products out there, Pave Drain, Stormcrete, a number of these systems that have that kind of modular, removable, replaceable, easy to maintain sort of aspect to them. And if you're a landscape architect or an engineer in the Maryland area, don't hesitate to swing out to North Point sometime with your family and take a look at the open joint permeable pavers. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the North Point State Park Power Block open joint permeable paver installation, and stay tuned for future episodes of the LIDbit.